Okay, guys, we are right at the top of the hour here, so I'm going to go ahead and get us kicked off. First, thank you everyone for joining us today. Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. My name is Chris Cruz, and I'm the Director of Cloud Marketing here at InterVision. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join our conversation on driving business value beyond the edge. I'm very excited to have our guest here from Silver Peak, and I'm looking forward to the content that our presenters have to share with you. For those of you who are not aware, InterVision is a strategic service provider with decades of experience helping thousands of clients run, grow, and transform their business with the right technology, hosted in the right premise, and delivered under the right service model. Before we jump into our conversation, I wanted to get a few housekeeping items out of the way. First, there will be time for Q&As at the end of the session. However, you can use your chat or Q&A functionality at any time to ask questions, and I'll personally do my best to get those slotted in when we have a window of opportunity with our presenters. So please engage and keep those questions coming. Also, for those of you who want follow-on information, we will be providing a recording of this session after the session's over, along with an opportunity to connect with one of our experts here at InterVision and Silver Peak. So typically we'll get that recording out within 24 hours or so of the presentation. So expect to see that. Now I'm going to go ahead and introduce today's speakers. All right, so we've got some great speakers for you guys today. Jeff Tunn is responsible for driving InterVision's strategic service portfolio and alliances. Jeff focuses on bringing together the evolving IT landscape, the changing needs of our clients, the passion of our employees. With over 30 years of experience in business and information technology, with multiple stints as a CIO, Jeff's real-world experience helps him deliver value to InterVision's clients no matter where they are in their IT transformation journey. Paul Randleson. Paul leads the value management group at Silver Peak, where his team works with his customers to determine the value of investing in SD-WAN by collaborating with executives to understand and quantify the business drivers to build a compelling business case to go to the edge. Paul also works with clients to realize additional value of SD-WAN post-deployment. Okay, guys, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to you, and I'm looking forward to a great presentation.
Hey, thanks, Chris. Really appreciate that. InterVision's relationship with Silver Peak continues to grow and evolve. We've been a reseller of Silver Peak's SD-WAN solutions for a few years. In 2019, we launched our managed SD-WAN service in partnership with Silver Peak. And very soon in 2020, we will be launching SD-WAN as a service, again in partnership with Silver Peak. A few months ago, I was able to sit down and chat with Paul on our podcast, Status Go. We talked about the business drivers that are leading many businesses of all sizes and in all industries to adopt SD-WAN. So it's going to be good to dig a little deeper with Paul today. It's good to chat with you again, Paul.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited to be back, Jeff, and looking forward to continuing our conversation.
So we're going to cover a lot of ground today in this in our webinar. We're going to start with talking about why embrace the edge. We'll talk about why make the move, what's the best time to make that move, and what to look for. And I may even ask Paul to get his crystal ball out a little bit and talk about the future. And then we're going to shift into how to gain the most value. Businesses everywhere are leveraging SD-WAN to drive business value, and we're going to talk about that and how to assess it. We'll also talk about what works and what doesn't, touch on best practices. And I'm sure Paul will be very candid in his feedback on those best practices. Lastly, we'll talk about meeting you on the edge, InterVision's right model, and how InterVision partners with Silver Peak to provide the best service possible. We're going to take a little bit of a different approach on this webinar. It's going to be highly interactive, more of an interview between Paul and I, very similar to our podcast. But Paul is going to be sharing his insights and real-world scenarios, anonymized, of course. Are you ready, Paul?
I am indeed. Let's go.
All right. So let's start with the why. Why embrace the edge? Why make the move? And when is the best time?
So, Jeff, traditional WAN models of routers and backhauling to data centers is a model that has been around for 30 years and frankly is no longer cost effective and more importantly, no longer able to serve the diverse needs of the business. When you consider companies are investing in modern cloud applications, Office 365, Salesforce, UCaaS solutions, companies are investing in modern cloud infrastructure, AWS, Azure, Google. What is the backbone that ensures performance? It's an investment in a modern WAN enabled by SD-WAN. So I've seen studies that say 85% of IT decision makers acknowledge that they are years away from fully realizing the benefits of the cloud because of application and network disruptions that can't keep pace with demand. And as you're showing here, uptime is critical for companies now more than ever with the cloud. Companies require speed to deploy, speed to adopt new capabilities that will improve the experience they provide their customers. Layer onto this the security requirements with protecting both their data and their customers' data, and it shouldn't be a surprise that our router-centric model is outdated today. So to answer your question about when is the best time, Jeff, you did a great job of answering this on our podcast. If you remember that, I actually put it back to you and used the HVAC example, but let me just recap for our listeners today. There are some clear drivers when circuit contracts are coming up for renewal, when hardware refresh is coming up for renewal, whether that's routers, WAN ops, firewall. All of this is related to their WAN costs, or, and it really is a big or, when you have outgrown your current WAN. So you have users complaining about performance, cost of data extraction from the cloud is too high, you can't support new digital initiatives. It really comes down to costs, performance, and your business needs.
So let's talk about the how in all this. How are organizations gaining value from SD-WAN, and how should those considering this an approach, how should they approach that gaining value aspect of the decision making process?
So in addition to some of the cost drivers we just referenced, the value comes from improving application performance and the automation of your WAN. SD-WAN significantly lowers the amount of time that network engineers spend on troubleshooting so they can focus on adding value to the business with new solutions and capabilities. Silver Peak enables this in multiple ways. We deliver zero-touch provisioning, which means you can deploy WAN changes centrally and let our orchestrator push that to all the sites across your WAN, which reduces time to deploy and eliminates, frankly, the risk of keystroke error. You can create templates for site types and locations to prioritize your business critical applications through business intent and deprioritize those applications that are not critical to your success. Some of these social applications your employees might be bringing in and putting across your network potentially. The ability to do local breakout for trusted SaaS applications and other designated traffic further reduces latency, improves application performance. When it comes to firefighting, we've seen a significant reduction, up to 93% drop in time spent troubleshooting and a greatly reduced mean time to repair with a built-out visibility tools and visibility tools and analytics. And finally, your point here about continuous adaptation, that's what delivers real-time response to the health of circuits. Many companies are paying for multiple circuits, but running them in an active passive mode. We allow you to use all the circuits you're paying for, and we constantly monitor the health of the circuits and direct traffic accordingly. If a circuit has degradation or fails, it triggers an immediate adjustment so users are unaware of these issues, as frankly, their applications just work.
So no webinar would be complete without a discussion of best practices. So what are some of the keys to success, and what have you seen fail?
Jeff, I believe it's critical for companies to understand the business drivers of a move to SD-WAN and then select a solution that will meet their current and future needs. So let me expand on this with a few scenarios. Is the company adopting Office 365 and/or UCaaS solutions? Do they want to have quality voice and video over broadband to avoid the costs of MPLS or DIA? Frankly, not all SD-WAN solutions can enable this. Is the company planning on rolling out new initiatives over the next few years that require a next generation network to support that success? Is the company adopting a cloud first strategy, perhaps moving their ERP into the cloud, which, as we know, is the lifeblood of many companies and requires that performance? Does the company have plans to expand internationally and requires an SD-WAN vendor that delivers global support? Is the company growing rapidly, either organically or through M&A, and cannot wait for 2, 3, maybe 6 months, sometimes even longer outside of North America and Europe to provision MPLS circuits to allow their new sites to begin operating? So where I've seen companies fail is when they either quickly outgrow a basic SD-WAN solution or when they fail to comprehensively test or do a proof of concept on the solution. Ultimately, your network is critical to success. So I would advise against letting price be the primary driver and then selecting a solution that doesn't meet the needs under less than perfect conditions. The SD-WAN landscape has grown rapidly in the past 3 years from less than 20 vendors to more than 65 today. There's a lot of confusion and unfortunately misinformation out there, and I would encourage companies to ensure they properly test an SD-WAN solution, plus the ability of the vendor and their deployment partner to support the global business needs.
It's funny in IT, it always comes down to testing, doesn't it? That's always so critical. So let's double click on the drivers for SD-WAN. We touched on these a little bit in our podcast, and so as we're going through this, we'll look at a couple of different areas: business value, the IT value, and the strategic value. And I know we can't use company names, but let's use some real world examples in each area.
Absolutely.
So, as we were discussing earlier, there are a lot of business value drivers leading organizations to adopt Silver Peak SD-WAN technology. Cost reduction, increased productivity due to fewer outages, consolidation of infrastructure, cost avoidance, to name just a few. But I think you'd like to tell us about a specific case related to accelerating location deployment. Is that right?
Indeed, because really it builds upon our earlier discussion that speed is of the essence. Without exaggeration, I have yet to see a business case without a positive ROI when it comes to SD-WAN. So once you've selected the right SD-WAN solution for your needs, you want to deploy quickly to start realizing the business value of both employee productivity through application performance and lower WAN costs. We within Silver Peak refer to this as the multiplier effect. So with this quote you're showing here, accelerated location opening, frankly, is the number one benefit that is referenced in our 100 plus case studies available through our website. Through zero touch provisioning, we have seen one company that rolled out 139 sites in just, or excuse me, 189 sites in just 4 months, which is incredible and speaks to the power of a template approach at the site level and our orchestrator. I think, in fact, they peaked at rolling out 27 sites a week and then gained, it's incredible, and gained visibility and control of their network to see how both their SaaS and infrastructure as a service was being used as they embraced new technologies to differentiate and provide ultimately their customers with a superior experience. We have another deployment going on right now with a very large retailer that is rolling out across North America, and their implementation partner is deploying the SD-WAN far more quickly than this retailer believed was possible. Like, frankly, I'm waiting for a call for them to say, we want to slow this down because we don't have the hardware and everything to
Yeah.
go. But not only does this improve the business value and the ROI, which is the foundation of the investment, but it delivers that WAN foundation that they can build upon to compete against, frankly, online retailers such as Amazon and others. Every retailer is worried about the Amazon effect, right? And this is a platform
Absolutely.
for them to differentiate.
I can remember a few years ago, I was CIO for an organization that had 50 or 60 locations, and our network rollout took over a year. And we didn't have near 189 locations. So that's a tremendous advantage to be able, that speed to market, speed to deploy is just tremendous.
It really is a game changer today. And that's why we encourage so many customers and prospects to start looking at SD-WAN and the value to them.
So a lot of our attendees today, Paul, are IT professionals. What value does SD-WAN bring to the IT department?
Really, SD-WAN allows IT departments to do more with less through the cost savings and reduced firefighting, but it also allows IT to partner with the business as they deliver business intent of their business applications. IT departments can engage the business to understand which applications are critical at the site level and prioritize the performance and uptime. So think about call centers with a focus on CRM and voice and video performance versus production sites where they'll want to focus on their ERP and their MES solutions. They can also focus on rolling out new applications that the business requires to grow and evolve. And they do this through the reduction in firefighting and time spent on break fix troubleshooting. I had a conversation with a VP of networks for a heavy equipment manufacturer recently, and he told me that he would like to see a report in the future release so that he can sit with the business and show them how many impacts, either brownouts, blackouts, that they would have experienced without Silver Peak and our continuous adaptation. I just kind of was sitting in this conversation and thinking to myself that there's some kind of Rodney Dangerfield quote here that he's not feeling appreciation. But I mean, that really is the best thing, right? When the users aren't calling to complain, that is really the validation. And I think he wants to be able to show that back to the business. And then we combine that with orchestration, which automates the rollout of policies and security changes across the network, which saves time and money. So we can look at another example when companies are deploying cloud security. They need to build all those IPsec tunnels to their cloud providers' points of presence or POPs. If you think about this, you talked about your 100 site example, and each of these IPsec tunnels takes 1 to 2 hours to build. So 100 sites, let's call it 200 hours. That's 5 weeks of manual effort that we now automate with a single click. So I think that's just a perfect example of some of those IT value drivers.
Yeah, so I think with the audience of our IT professionals, I think when you mention cost reductions in IT, their ears really perk up. So can you take us through that one in a little bit more detail?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. In addition to the productivity improvements we just talked about of running the WAN, let's double click on some of these cost savings. So, how often have companies experienced a circuit degradation which temporarily impacts application performance? When this happens, let's think about it. Users submit IT tickets. Now, some companies have outsourced these IT tickets and they now have to pay per ticket. So suddenly they're incurring costs that are unnecessary if they had an SD-WAN solution. And then they see their internal teams spending time trying to understand if they have an application issue, a network issue, a hardware issue, another issue, and they're incurring all these costs of having various employees troubleshooting. So not only do they potentially have multiple people engaged on this, they might be using expensive network engineers and pulling them away from higher value projects. So really, in summary, the cost savings can include that cost of processing and paying for IT tickets, the costs of multiple people working the tickets, and lowering that time to resolve the tickets, which takes them away from adding value to the business with new capabilities, new applications, new functionality. Recently we were doing a POC with a metal processing facility, and Jeff, you're going to laugh at the end of this, but it's a true story. So we left our Edge Connect running at the test site over the weekend, and then we returned to the site on Monday, and we were looking through the analytics built into the orchestrator and noticed that one of the circuits was down all weekend. So we let them know about it. And honestly, they were amazed that not only they hadn't realized, but that none of their business users had complained about the network performance. I mean, when you think about it from the sales side, it was a perfect scenario that we told them. Yeah, it was a great story, and they brought me in for the business case after that, and it was really like, okay, how much time do we really need to spend on this now? So
yes, exactly.
yeah.
So I know we have some IT executives in our audience today, and SD-WAN can be a critical driver of their IT strategy. A strategic value driver that is near and dear to my heart is disaster recovery. SD-WAN can help achieve those recovery point objectives at a much lower cost. Of course, many enterprises are adopting a cloud strategy, and their cloud usage is ramping up. SD-WAN can be a key component of that strategy, helping to reduce costs and optimizing usage. So let's dig into how SD-WAN can help an organization's cloud strategy and digitization initiatives.
Isn't it amazing how often we hear the term digitization?
Uh-huh.
I think if you ask 5 people what this means, you're likely going to get 5 different answers. But
I think so.
yeah, fundamentally, we know it involves moving data across the WAN, and SD-WAN is an enabler of that and lowers the risk associated with these, quote, digitization initiatives. So let me give you one example. Servitization is another one of these buzzwords. I think it came from Europe and refers to when companies are looking for new business models to drive increased revenue and predictable revenue for the financial markets through offering a service offering, just that. So Rolls-Royce, they make aircraft engines, as you know, and they've moved from selling the engine to a power by the hour model. So what this means is that they'll sell you an hour of engine use time, and then they handle all the engine related responsibilities, including the maintenance, the spare parts, the documentation. And we also know that planes produce massive amounts of information during every flight, and this information needs to be fed into the Rolls-Royce ERP and maintenance solutions so that they can properly service the engines and bill the customers and maintain that uptime. So investing in SD-WAN is an enabler and de-risks companies adopting new strategies and initiatives. I can't tell you how often I've heard companies frustrated by the speed of rolling out Office 365 due to the needs, to reconfigure routers at the site level, and then the performance impact on their users due to backhauling and frankly pushing more information on small MPLS circuits. Also, we know with the cloud providers, there's virtually no charge to put data into the cloud, but there is a cost for extraction. Some companies are really getting surprised how these bills are increasing, and this has led to a resurgence of the need for WAN optimization and the ability to compress and dedupe data to reduce the amount of traffic by 30% or more. And one final point is companies are purchasing these dedicated circuits, whether it's the Azure Express routes, the AWS Direct Connect, which frankly they cost thousands per month and do deliver a single point of risk if that circuit experiences brownouts or complete outages. Silver Peak, we can deliver a virtualized edge connect in your cloud environments to allow you to avoid these costs, leverage larger circuits, broadband circuits, and use multiple circuits to ultimately lower the risk and improve performance.
Well, I'd love to turn our attention now to why InterVision and why Silver Peak.
Very good.
Well, InterVision chose to work with Silver Peak, frankly, because we like to work with the best of the best. Silver Peak has been named a leader in WAN Edge for the second consecutive year by Gartner. However, even more important than industry recognition, our market, our customers, were demanding Silver Peak. They recognized the technology as the best. When you think of all the service providers out there, why did Silver Peak choose to partner with InterVision?
Jeff, that's really an easy answer. Like us, you've been recognized as a leader in the market, whether through Gartner's Magic Quadrant leadership for disaster recovery as a service, 4 or 5 years running, I believe, selection as an AWS Premier Consulting Partner. As you said, I like that, the best of the best. I think the other thing we see in InterVision is that true strategic service provider many organizations are seeking, excuse me. We think InterVision is that perfect partner to help us take SD-WAN to the edge and beyond. Silver Peak as a company, we really only do one thing in SD-WAN, and we have a focus like no other vendor in this space. We simply cannot allow our customers to be unsuccessful in their SD-WAN journey, as this will impact us more than any of our diversified competitors. Reputation is critical, so we only partner with the best companies that put customers first.
I love how you stated that, Paul, and talked about your focus, because our focus is on helping customers throughout their business journey, whether they're in the run, the grow, the transform, or all three at the same time. CIOs are being called upon to grow and transform. However, that run is still such a critical part of their responsibilities, the quote unquote keeping the lights on. InterVision is built to be able to help our customers in each of those three critical areas. Paul, I have a couple questions for you related to run, grow, transform. First, as you're out in the market and you're talking with CIOs and executives, are you seeing that same demand on them, that the businesses are demanding that they spend more time in grow and transform? And then secondarily, how does Silver Peak SD-WAN help in those areas of run, grow, and transform?
Jeff, I have yet to meet a CIO that isn't being asked to do more and do it faster and do it at a lower cost. So yes, they're looking to grow, and yes, they're looking to transform. And it's really because of this that I joined Silver Peak, as our Edge Connect is a solution that allow IT departments to do more, do it faster, and do it at a lower cost. I mean, how many other solutions are there out there that can enable this for IT departments? So as we've talked about today, Silver Peak SD-WAN can reduce operational costs and complexities in the run, accelerate growth through the speed of deployment, and help organizations transform through enabling cloud environments and the adoption of new solutions and business models.
I think that's a great point, because a lot of times I talk to folks that are considering moving to the cloud, or they're in process of moving to the cloud, and they still have to worry about the network. The network is not going away anytime soon, whether you're running on premises in a hosted environment or in the cloud. When I look at InterVision, our our approach is really this transformational approach of the right premises, on customer premises, in our hosted environments, or in the cloud of AWS, Azure. The right technology, whether it's digital infrastructure or resiliency or communication, and the right model of managed service, professional services, and self-service. When we dig into that, we look at this self-service, the managed service, and the as a service. The self-service, the client, the customer owns and manages the WAN edge. However, if they want a managed service, then they own the devices and we manage the WAN edge for them. Finally, as I hinted about earlier, we're getting ready to partner with, well, we are partnering with Silver Peak, and we're getting ready to launch our SD-WAN as a service to the market in the next few months. The as a service model we've grown up with through software as a service, but the concept is InterVision owns and manages the. So, Paul, I'd love your thoughts on this transition to this as a service model that now encompasses things like the WAN edge.
Absolutely. And what I love with your model is that you're giving customers the choice. You'll make recommendations, but ultimately it gives them the choice. What I'm seeing is that customers and companies do want that flexibility to be able to choose the option that is best for them between OpEx, CapEx. CFOs have many levers to ensure that they have the optimum balance between capital and operating expenses. And a significant benefit of SD-WAN as a service is that it allows companies to deploy earlier by avoiding those large upfront purchases, which might require additional approval and shall we say inspection, and then avoids or delays their ability to start realizing savings to start the transformation. I'm working with one prospect right now that has a budget approved for their annual renewal of a competitive WAN ops solution. They've told us that if we can structure the purchase so that they're cost neutral against this budget item that's been approved by using an OpEx model, that they can start the project this year, which is really their preference. So when you think about the financial cost of delaying an SD-WAN deployment, building upon the fact that we've never yet seen an ROI that wasn't positive, renewing outdated solutions, this flexibility is a win for customers.
I think the as a service model is going to continue to grow because it is attractive for that reason. You can get your project started much faster, as you say. Paul, as
Absolutely.
you know, on our podcast Status Go, I always like to put our guests on the spot, or rather ask them to give us a call to action, something our listeners can do to take those first steps. So let me ask you, how can our attendees get started with Silver Peak SD-WAN today?
So, Jeff, I would encourage our listeners to go to the Silver Peak website and to use the ROI calculator to understand if SD-WAN is financially attractive. We've designed the calculator to be easy to use and made many of the assumptions so that our users only need to enter a few data points, such as their industry, revenue, number of sites, and frankly, average bandwidth. We also list some of the assumptions so that the users today can adjust them to reflect their environments and costs. But if not, we've standardized this. And this will generate a 3 or 5 year ROI and allow them to decide if they'd like to do further investigation into the financial, operational, and strategic benefits of investing in SD-WAN.
So it really kind of whets their appetite because it starts to show them some of the value that they can derive out of this. So what if our listeners want to get even closer to the edge?
So if they want to do a deeper dive on the value of SD-WAN, we can work with them to build a spoke business case. So we'll work with them to understand which of the various business, automation, strategic value drivers that you showed earlier are
Mhm.
relevant to their current and again, future business requirements, and work with their information and their data to really deliver the following. We'll give them a one-page executive summary that answers those questions: why SD-WAN, why Silver Peak, why InterVision, why now? You're showing the benefits here. So we will work at a line item level so that they can have the confidence in the benefits, and equally important, use this as part of their deployment plan to track and measure their results. As we know, your former life as a CIO, setting targets, measuring progress is critical from a change management perspective. So we understand the benefits, we'll understand the costs. That'll allow us to generate the ROI that will provide all those relevant financial metrics, the NPV, the IRR, the cost of delay, so that the ultimate decision maker can assess this versus other initiatives. And finally, we'll lay out what I like to call the strategic and differentiated benefits. So this involves identifying where SD-WAN will be an enabler to the business for whatever reasons we've jointly agreed not to quantify the savings. And those are what I call strategic benefits. So perhaps they didn't want to put a cost around productivity, they deemed that as a soft cost. Well, we'll call out some of those areas that performance will be improved, but we haven't quantified it in the ROI. We'll then also look at some of the differentiated benefits. So these are areas that we highlight the way Silver Peak differentiates from our competitors and what that means for the prospect should they deploy Silver Peak in their environment.
I think that is such a great recap, Paul, because the partnership between Silver Peak and InterVision really helps drive value for our customers, our combined customers, whether it's strategic benefits, as you've outlined here, the differentiated benefits, or really any of those business value drivers, the IT value drivers, and the strategic value drivers. Together, we can come up with that plan for the customer and make the appropriate recommendations, as we were talking about earlier. What I'd
Absolutely.
love to do right now, sorry to cut you off, Paul, my bad. What I wanted to do right now is open it up to some questions. I know we've had some come in during the webinar. So as you're contemplating using the ROI calculator, let's shift it to some Q&A. Chris?
Yeah, Jeff. So this one came in just a little bit ago. So if a customer chooses to go with Silver Peak, InterVision can deploy Silver Peak appliances and fully manage them. He just wanted to make sure that he understood that statement.
That is correct. We can do the deployment through professional services, and then we can manage those devices, whether it's in a more traditional sense where the customer owns the device and we manage the network and manage the device, or whether it's going to be the as a service model where InterVision itself owns the device and provides that as a service, as a metered service to the client.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. This next one is relevant to the ERP conversation. For companies that are moving their ERP to the cloud, when should they deploy SD-WAN?
Jeff, if you're okay, I'll take this one. I think
I was going to toss to you, so that's good.
perfect. Good. We're on the same page as always. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, really, from what I've seen, and frankly, my background is almost 10 years in ERP. It is the backbone of the company. So for almost all companies, so I would suggest they deploy SD-WAN before moving their ERP to the cloud. Let me just give you one example. I was working with another prospect who has since become a customer. They had a new CFO come in, and that CFO realized that they were using a 20-year-old green screen ERP and decided that they needed to modernize that for a number of reasons. So we were sitting talking about SD-WAN, and I asked them a little bit about what they had, and again, they explained green screens, and I said, "Do you realize the risk and the change management you're about to kind of take on?" And they kind of leaned in and said, "Tell me more." I said, "Well, you've got all these users that have been using this lightweight system that know every shortcut. They hold Alt, I don't know, 274, and they can jump between screens. They can enter the data so quickly. So now you're going to ask them to kind of relearn everything, forget everything they know. So there's kind of risk one. And if you don't invest in SD-WAN and upgrade your network, that system is going to be so unresponsive. Unfortunately, I've just seen it too many times that now users are going to complain. Not only do they have to learn something new, but the new system is that much slower. So I said, we can go through all the testing and that and show you, but from a risk mitigation point, I think we should really look at this. And frankly, that deal got done a month later. It never went through as the SD-WAN project. It went through as the Oracle ERP project, and it was 1% of the budget for them. But to me, you really want to make sure your network is sound and operating well before you move your ERP into the cloud.
Awesome. I think this next question ties into the risk mitigation piece. I've heard talk about SD-WAN as insurance. Can either of you expand on that?
Sure. Yeah. Jeff, are you okay if I take the first pass of this? Yep.
Absolutely.
So, I like to think about insurance as the way to mitigate what companies are spending monthly for their employees to be productive. So think about at a site level how much they're spending on applications, whether it's ERP, CRM, HR, voice, video, how much they're spending on the hardware, the routers, the firewall. They're spending on, circuits and multiple circuits. They're spending on, frankly, the facilities, the IT support. Again, so many categories, tens of thousands of dollars a month to ensure that their employees are productive and able to use applications to drive value for their customers. So with that cost of tens or hundreds of thousands, whatever it might be for the respective company, isn't a few $100s a month for an SD-WAN solution at the site level some pretty low cost insurance?
I think you said it very well, Paul. It's insurance because it mitigates against the risk of downtime. Your story of the client or the prospect at the time that had the connectivity go their circuit go down over the weekend and they lost no connectivity. That's an amazing insurance policy against those types of risks.
It Absolutely is. And we know as companies move from 3, 4, 5 nines of availability, how many hours of downtime that translates to monthly. So it really is a compelling story for prospects and customers.
All right, we got one more here, and I just encourage the audience, please keep them coming. So what are some differences between a basic SD-WAN and an advanced self-driving SD-WAN?
When I think about a basic SD-WAN, it is one that delivers zero-touch provisioning, local internet breakout, so some of those kind of capabilities. But as we move up that spectrum to an advanced SD-WAN, this is what delivers that orchestration, the automation, the ability to do voice and video over broadband with SLAs, a unified platform so they can consolidate routing, firewalls, WAN op, edge-to-edge segmentation, automated troubleshooting. So many capabilities. The way I like to think about it, it's really the difference between a Tesla and frankly a traditional car that lacks that automation. If you think about it that way, that's really a pretty good analogy, I think.
Yeah, I remember that from our podcast, Paul, when you talked about self-driving, because I'd heard it in reference to automobiles, obviously, and it was great to dig into that in our conversation and understand what Silver Peak means by a self-driving SD-WAN solution. And I think that's a differentiator.
Absolutely. I think some people view SD as software driven, but for us, it really is about a self-driving WAN.
Yeah.
Great, great. This one's a little nuanced. I'll do my best to articulate it. Silver Peak supports MPLS, Internet, LTE. Are you seeing the reduced cost of Internet as a driver to start moving away from MPLS? And then there's a secondary component to this. And used SD-WAN with broadband and dedicated Internet.
So it really sounds like, is the move away from MPLS one of the drivers? And it absolutely is. I work with customers and prospects to understand what they're paying for multiple MPLS circuits and frankly what their risk tolerance levels are. And we talk about, we'll model in the business case, why don't we move from one MPLS to a DIA? So we have a single circuit MPLS, single circuit DIA, or we might do a single circuit MPLS or DIA, a single circuit broadband, and start realizing some of those circuit savings, which can be sizable. And especially, for those that aren't aware, we have a certain level of MPLS costs in North America and Europe. But once you get to South America, Asia, and that, frankly, the highest I've seen was a company in Japan spending $60,000 a month for a single MPLS circuit. So, looking at that and being able to move from dual MPLS to a single MPLS or completely eliminate MPLS, I think is one of the drivers. But cost is not always the only driver. I'll really come back to what we talked about earlier with what are the business drivers and why does a company need to invest in a WAN that will enable their future growth.
Perfect, perfect. And that same audience member articulated here, he says, I asked this because I was pricing a 1 Gbps MPLS circuit for $4,500 versus a 1 Gbps dedicated internet for, it looks like 1,200 from the same provider. So there's a cost savings there. He's just,
Yeah,
Absolutely.
what I'm kind of seeing as a rule of thumb, and let's use North America as an example. Moving from MPLS to DIA, generally it's kind of savings of 60% plus or minus around that. But then we also allow you to move to consumer broadband if you want. And then you're getting up to the 90% type savings. We also allow LTE and other connections like that. And I think, with 5G coming out and with the ability to get broadband circuits to different sites, this is really going to be another game changer for companies. And that's where, again, an investment in SD-WAN just gives them those choices and flexibility.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what you were talking about earlier, Paul, and the ROI calculator, that sometimes the circuit savings can almost pay for the entire project. It can be that
Yes.
significant.
It really can, depending on the contracts and that. It can pay for it. It can pay for it as a standalone. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, this was fantastic. It looks like we may be at the end here with the questions. I'll just add, that it's obvious that Silver Peak is a leader in SD-WAN, and InterVision can help, consult, deploy, and manage your Silver Peak here. So we're going to reach out within 24 hours or so with the recording of today's session, and also you can just connect right there with us via email by responding to let us know if you'd like to have a conversation. But thank you both, Jeff and Paul, so much. I think this was a great session.
Absolutely. And Paul, thank you for joining today. I appreciate it, and we value the partnership. To our attendees, thank you so much for watching and listening today. We do appreciate it.
Jeff and everyone, thank you. Yeah, really appreciate being here.
Great. Take care. Have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.